All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. Before we get started, we'd like to let you know that the Uncommon Gem podcast is an adult content show, meaning we may go into explicit detail or say some explicit words when talking about today's subjects. We also like to inform you that we're not paid or sponsored by any of the donations or charities in the episode. We simply just are giving it a shout out and hopefully spreading the word on some good causes. Folks, before we do continue with today's episode, we would like to address that we do talk heavily on the subjects of suicide, depression, and self-harm. We just do this out of common courtesy and as well to let you know that these are heavy subjects, but these do happen very commonly in people's lives, so we do feel it needs to be addressed. That way, if you do see it in your own life or your friend's life, you're able to help them out and able to see how to go about it. Thanks again for tuning in, and let's get on with the show. Yo, what is up, everyone? Thank you again for tuning in to the Uncommon Gem podcast. My name is Kevin Estevez. I'm the host of the pod. Episode 7, we are coming back at you. As we know, the last episode we had an audio issue. Hopefully this time around we got it. Definitely thank you again for listening to that episode, and thanks to Frank for dealing with us there. Today's guest, I'm very excited to invite onto the show. He is one of the more independent stand-up comedians I know because he's really running most of his stuff on his own. He's really getting his own grassroots movement on his own power, his own ambition, which I really respect. But really wise guy. He's coming out from Maine, Buxton, Maine. Shoutouts. You can catch him on Twitch. His handle is neurotic_fodder. But his name on Instagram and his real name in person is Marcus Cardona. So definitely check him out. Folks, please welcome to the show, Marcus Cardona.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me on Uncommon Gems. Yeah. I was like, episode 7. Man, I'm like, dude, it's funny because he was like, what should we plug? I was like, oh yeah, my Twitch, my Instagram. Oh yeah, I also have a podcast too called Meme Therapy, but I'm like, I'm only on episode 6. One of my episode audios is really bad, and I like, it's like I just do it when I have free time. But thanks for having me on episode 7. I enjoy the theme of the podcast just because I do Twitch and I also do a podcast, so right. And comedy. So I appreciate some, like, I would say it's better to be committed to one thing rather than be like the master of, like, it seems good. Everyone's like, oh yeah, you should master everything. And I'm just like, no, sometimes it's just good to just like commit to one thing because the quality of that will definitely be really good.
Yeah, I hear you. You definitely have done that throughout your career though. Like every time I look at your Instagram, you're either in a video, you're doing a Twitch thing, you recorded an album, like you're constantly just trying new different shit. Can you talk about that experience, especially like as a comedian?
Well, it's an interesting time because we are recording this still in the pandemic, but yeah, it's one of those things where I had a very interesting upbringing just joining comedy because one, I'm a Filipino and I'm from Maine, and I bring that up constantly during my stand-up set. I'm not sure if people know what that means because I'm like, Maine's the whitest state and Maine is also super rural, and I started comedy in Maine before I moved to New York. And unlike most comedy scenes, well, I mean, I'm sure all other rural comedy scenes are the same, but in Maine, there was no comedy club from like 2012, which is 1 year after I started comedy, to literally 2020. So I started my first year in comedy. I literally did the one comedy club, and then the comedy clubs disappeared. So then I was just used to the independent circuit of bar shows and comedy producers. And like in all honesty, it really isn't. It's kind of like with any kind of entertainment production, like music or anything like that. You don't really need to be in the big venue. It's just, how well of a promoter are you? How well of a show can you do? Can you do the talent? Can you budget? Can you market? All these like little aspects of it. So as soon as you see through that, it just kind of fades away. But I also started in sketch comedy. So it was like I've always been kind of just doing too much because I was a college kid. I didn't want to use my college degree. And it was peak YouTube time. So it was like, you saw like the whitest kids, you saw like Donald
Derek
Glover.
Comedy.
Yeah, you saw Derek Comedy. You saw all these big guys like coming out with when I started. So I was like, okay, cool. Sketch comedy is going to be like my thing, and I'll do stand up on the side. However, because Maine's so rural, you have to understand that how hard social media presence works. YouTube, there is a chance that, anything you upload could go viral because they've always had like this findability algorithm or discoverability. And I don't know, I was just uploading sketches and I couldn't get any traction because no one in Maine cares about anything online. Dude, it sucks. It was like a hard thing to realize. They're good at word of mouth, which is kind of cool. But besides that, you have to, like, the best way that I've said it is cast a wide net and then maybe you'll catch something. But besides that, you really just gotta hone in on your art. Because I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I'm good in my comedy style. I'm like, I've been established, but now once I moved to New York, it's its own beast because everyone who's there's like so many young people there. There's so many
vets.
Not even vets, because even like I'm always shocked because there are like vets there who've been in New York. You've been at like the peak of it. They never really got their footing. While I have outside experience, so I know exactly what I'm doing. Because no matter what, the city, there's so many people, so you still do need something to stand out. But realistically, what I've learned in the city is you need a rich person to like you, and then everyone kind of is like, oh, yeah. That's how modern art works. You need one rich person to like love your art, and then after everyone's like, oh, this rich person loves their thing, and then I'm like, oh, maybe I'll be rich by liking it. I was like, all right.
No truer words have been spoken. No truer words have been spoken.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that because you actually, so I have a UCB comedy upbringing and we'll talk about how we met.
Yeah.
But you had called that out. You were like, hey man, I'm going to be honest, like a lot of people that only make it out of that scene have the money behind them, like you told me like straight up. And thank you for doing that because now we know the truths about UCB a little bit. We know the background shit. And that's not just UCB either. That's literally majority comedy
not even UCB, was it? Second City too. Like a lot of there's a lot of improv. There's a lot of industries that part of their, because there's still business models, and half of the business model is literally just taking advantage of the kid who's like, maybe I'll do comedy, maybe I'll do improv, and then they only do it a couple years. It's like the phase, and then there's like the person who goes for it. So it's very Goodwill Hunting-esque. It's like, oh yeah, college degree. I'm like, I learned this for free. I was like, all right.
So yeah, I want to talk about, because we have a very funny introduction to one another. So you, a stand-up comedian, were just performing one night, and I had worked at a bar with our good friend Justin.
Yeah, Justin.
So to describe Justin, he is a Bostonian through and through, true diehard Boston person.
Yeah, Justin is a professional clown as well, which is a professional clown and balloon artist. We should talk about that because we're not all connected through just the one friend. I'm like, it is a connection through comedy. I'm like, improv, sketch, stand-up,
and balloons,
and then balloons and a professional clown, which even, oh my god, this is actually my favorite. But yeah, Justin's a really good creative guy. He comes from Boston, more like I've talked to him. He has like a classic Boston, like Massachusetts, little bit more conservative family, and you could tell he's like the funny black sheep of his family. And I appreciate that because I don't know how much everyone in the service industry is different, but he definitely, New York was definitely killing him on this.
That man was hustling though. He was working multiple jobs.
That man was hustling. He was trying to be a good fiance and all these things, and he was a really fun, creative dude. I enjoyed Justin's vibe, but as a service industry person, and I always say this, service industry people are always the funniest people. Like there's so many back of the house kitchen workers. Yeah, they could probably do stand up, but their schedule doesn't work with it. I'm like, it's unfortunate because I'm like, because I started in kitchens too, but I also worked with Justin when I was manager of a restaurant, or before I became manager of a restaurant in the Upper West Side. But yeah, Justin, really good dude. He taught me about do you know about this? Do you know about the hierarchy of clowns?
We got to bring it onto the pod.
Oh, man.
Because I don't know about this.
Okay, cool. So we've talked about, a rich person finding out that you're like that. You need a rich person to give you visibility as an artist. There are tiers of, stand-up comedians where it's like open micer, road comic, touring comic, college circuit, all these other different things. Well, I didn't know this from Justin because I've never actually met a professional clown. But he told me about the history, and you can look it up too. It's about clowns. There's tiers of clowns. There's like the hobo clown, which I didn't know was like an American thing, which made fun of like, the fact that people were, that Americans, like a very homeless people, hobos, like that was our clown, which is a very American thing, which is, that is capitalism to the T. I was like, how?
Boy.
So then the highest one, like the most revered, and it's the classical like clown in the circus, is like the white face clown. That's the top one. And then it also goes into like mimes are also in there. It's the non-speaking clown. That's basically it. So that's like the top one. It's okay. So there's color, but it's also based on persona. But the classic clown is the Harlequin, the one that has like the gestury look. Then there's the colorful one, the straight white face, which is a cheerful clown. Because there's also white face clowns that are like sad. Then there's August clown, which is like the tramp. There's like tiers of it, like how much makeup you're allowed to have, but you're supposedly not supposed to be a white face clown unless you've performed in the circus. So that's like an actual thing, because the tramp clowns used to be like sideshow acts. So they used to be just on the street, the clown that you'd see in Central Park or something like that. But then the white face clowns, literally, because there is the clown union, and it's always like it's always weird to think about other performing arts. I know that there's a tier for magicians too, but that's also like its own like side thing. But yeah, I learned that from Justin Martin, and I'm pretty sure he explained all this while we were on the subway to go play Dungeons and Dragons. So that should just like give, like, I feel like that would give you the best interaction of me and Justin just talking about like life and creativity.
That is so dope. Wow. I mean, yeah, that guy, he knows a lot about just more than clown stuff. He's a very smart man, but I bet you the detail he brought to it was awesome.
Oh yeah. He was telling me about he was telling me about the clown union. Also, during that time, that was when there was like the creepy clowns who were just in the woods with knives.
Oh yeah, he like, did talk to me about that.
That's like, because he was like, they're bastardizing our representation.
They're tarnishing our freaking art.
It is coming out, so we're gonna have to fight harder. And I'm just like, I don't understand the struggles of the clown world. But Baskets also came out. Baskets also was Baskets. Out. So it was also like another funny thing where I'm just, okay, I can see it now. I can see it. I just need like a story. No, that's real. Like that clown hierarchy is real.
So Marcus, as you mentioned, you are Filipino, and the one thing I love about your comedy is that your family is such a huge like backbone of it. So much so that even when I've gone to your comedy shows, your mother and father have literally gone to New York to watch you perform. And it's definitely added to the comedy a lot, because they are also very fun and unique characters as well.
Yeah, man, first generation born, but yeah, my Filipino upbringing in Maine is super fun because they're both hard. They're both super hard workers. They both speak perfect English. And the comedy doesn't come from the accent or anything like that. It comes from them being genuinely Filipino, but also being conservative, because I think that's also the thing. Like, conservative in America is very different from conservative anywhere else. It doesn't need to be religious, but it could be in the way that they're like, their willingness to change is very old school. Now in America, they're super liberal, but I feel like growing up, it was very much like people who were just, we got to America because we had to play the system. But luckily, the Filipino culture is very ingrained in the family unit, so I think that's also why they're so integral in my stand-up, because I felt for a while, when my parents really saw me going for stand-up, like, they were just like, oh, you should do something else, and then stand-up will be something on the side. And then once I started really going for it, then they're like, okay, use this in your stand-up if it helps you make money. I was like, that was really the push. That I'm just like, cool. But they're kind of both fixated in their old ways. Like my dad's a good dude, but he's very the stereotype of the emotionally shut off dad who's obsessed with his like lawn. And but it comes from a weird place, because like no matter what, every time I see my dad obsessed with his lawn, I also have to realize that he grew up in the Philippines. I've been to like where he grew up, there's not that much, it was mostly water around it. It's like kind of swampy area. He didn't have a lawn, so now he's making up for the lawn he didn't have as a child. Got you. My mom's a good Christian woman. It's taken her a while to kind of be just go with expression, or understand that not everyone has to like the form fitting. She's very happy with it. Me and my siblings, we all kind of took different there was all different aspects. I took the biggest not like route that my mom planned for me when I was a child, but there's like little things that my mom wished she had like more control about. She also understands we're all good we're all good people because we respect her However, 100%. She definitely wanted more, but now she's a grandma, and now that she's seen the economy crumble, because she's like that classic American upbringing where I'm like, oh, having a college degree will get you here, and then that's not true.
Like, it'll get you in debt.
This isn't true. This isn't true. And it's hard. There's a point as you grow up, when you finally realize that your parents aren't always correct. But she always had this like stubborn attitude. Me and my mom, our relationship now wouldn't have gotten to where it is now if we didn't have arguments. But my sisters were good daughters. I would argue with my mom, but it'd be healthy. It'd be like, well, no, that's not true, Mom. You don't know. You're not in the class. You're not. It was one of those like annoying things, because children of immigrants do this a lot, where we wanted to make our parents proud. That their childhood wasn't the same as yours, so it's like, what are you talking about? So but no one's childhood is the same as anyone else's. There's similarities, but it changes.
100%. As always, folks, we take some time to talk about a service and donation that we want to bring some attention to, and Marcus was so gracious enough to bring one onto the show. Marcus, you want to tell us what we're going to be talking about?
Yeah, so the donation that I chose for my episode of Uncommon Gems was actually the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And it's a great institution based in New York, and it's been around since 1987, and it's been something that, obviously, it's like suicide, it's an increasing issue. It's been increasing since like 2000 or 1998. It's been kind of on the rise, especially during the pandemic year has been like a hard year for everyone. But I think it's something with the mental health conversation that's been ongoing. It provides like a lifeline for anyone who may have thoughts, people who don't have accessibility to insurance, and also people who are going through rough economic conditions, because also people in unsafe situations, no matter what, like there's so many things you can't control. And unfortunately, there are external and internal factors that would contribute to someone, committing suicide. And this is really the program that is just there as a safety net. As soon as you have any thoughts, we can't operate without money. This is the one institution that is literally like, well, money might be the issue, so we're going to have something that, that takes away that issue of anyone being like, oh, I'm going to ruin a situation. But also, it also takes care of groups for like the LGBTQ community, as well as, any kind of minority group.
Yeah, super, super important. We had an episode talking about therapy and the value of mental health there, so couldn't agree more that that's necessary, especially after, like you said, this pandemic. So many people are dipping in dark times because they don't know what's on the other end. They might have lost a job that gave them everything they wanted, and now they don't have it anymore. So as you mentioned, they have the lifeline that people can call, and they also have a text line too. I feel that a lot of people sometimes think that it's not that prominent, but the numbers are kind of crazy. So in 2019, it was the second leading causes of death between 15 to 29-year-olds. In 2019 as well, there were 47,511 Americans that died via suicide. It's some people that you don't think are going through hard times that could be going through hard times, and vice versa. But they also offer ways to converse with these people and bring attention to these kind of details, because depression and stuff like that, it's harder to like register for certain people. People go through it in different ways as well. But I feel that the support system is really what you need in these kind of times. So being able to know how to talk to these people, being able to how to suggest advice for these people is really important too.
Absolutely.
As Marcus said, you can apply for grants, you can apply for things to help you in this kind of time too. They do the community walks. So right now with the pandemic, they've been doing it online via Zoom, but they will host walks where people who may have these kind of mental health issues or depression, they would go on these walks to like be there as a community and be there to help support and help be there for one another. And they have local chapters around the 50 states too, so it's really widespread all over the nation. Just so you know, folks, the website is afsp.org. The crisis text line is 741741, and the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 800-273-8255. So, like I said, if you know someone's going through a hard time, or if you yourself are going through a hard time, use that as your resource. Reach out to your loved ones and see what they can do to support you as well. All right, so now we get to the part of the show that is titled for the show. Marcus, do you mind telling us what your uncommon gem is?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story, which is a story originally by Ned Vizzini. It was in book form. It did come out in a movie And it's a great story. It is really relevant to the donation because, yeah, like the plot and like the author and everything like that. It's also very common. It's very New York. It's a very New York story that should be seen. And it's also a young adult story that hits upon the topic of suicide in like a better way. That's just like an honest thing, but also doesn't end in suicide, which is a good thing. So
So it follows Craig, who is a 16-year-old boy who begins to think that he is ready to kill himself. So he goes to the Brooklyn Bridge. That's how the movie starts. And he wants to jump off and kill himself. And then he doesn't end up doing it, but he ends up calling the Lifeline, which then puts him in a psych ward with all these other patients. And it kind of goes through there how he's stuck in there for 5 days. So it kind of goes through other people's life experiences and kind of puts it in his own perspective, kind of shows what he thinks life really is compared to what life really is for other people too.
Yeah, I've read the book and the movie, and then you've watched the movie, and then it's a really, I really enjoy it. I think that there's such a big disconnect because therapy is not common in rural areas, but it's super common in New York. And at this point now, therapy is kind of like a weird rich person flex. Kind of just like I go to therapy. It's just, by the way, I have money, and like that's like a weird thing. But this movie was really interesting because before I even did stand up, I was also like in that stressed out age because it's like right around 16 is when Craig is freaking out, and New York's tier system for schools is absolutely insane. I'm so glad I did not go to school in New York City because literally it's like, you need to get into this elementary school to get into this college. It's like, how did this system get set up? Because I met people who've grown up in the New York school system from like birth, and it's like they are like so wound up, especially the kids, but also living in New York, its own unique experience. I'm very happy I grew up in like a rural area. I've seen kids just like on subways late at night, and I'm just like, I was at home at this time, definitely like sleeping because my curfew was here. So, and also I didn't have this much mental stimulation because that's one thing that people don't really understand about people who choose rural versus people who choose city, because I'm like, no matter what, the stimulation of New York City is a lot. So like, it's even with
constantly moving, it's just constantly vibrating.
There's people constantly moving. There's so many people. There's so many things that are like thrown in your face daily. In rural areas, I could tell you that there's easy to build a routine. And it's easy to build a routine in New York City, but you don't have like necessarily 2 days that are exactly the same. In like the rural areas, I literally have days where I'm just like, it's exactly the same interaction, and I'm like, I'm fine with that because it's not like
Groundhog's Day.
It's not overwhelming because like I got diagnosed with ADHD right before SATs. So my issues that I had growing up, I used to be like, when they found out I had ADHD, it was funny because I didn't feel like I did. I thought, because I was getting tested for mentally, I was getting tested for, just to see like how my IQ was and like my test taking abilities. But because I proved that I was pretty intelligent for my age, but my approach to test taking was that of someone with ADHD, because I was a section jumper. So I'd like start in this section, jump to this section, jump to this section, do that one. And they told me that. And they prescribed me like, medication and stuff like that. And that was, I was on Ritalin at the time, it's like a big jump, and it's right before SATs. I'm already stressed out. I'm taking these things. And I did, before SATs, I doubled my dose because I thought it would help. I got withdrawals, and it was like the worst thing. So I haven't been on any kind of pharmaceuticals since then. So it's my own mental thing. But there's also like, when I moved to New York, I like really found I felt like I fit in. My rhythm was just there because of I was just so used to understimulation. So like, I always make the joke that I'm like, do I have ADHD or did I just like live in the country? You just don't have that overstimulation. And it's kind of a funny story when Craig's going through like all this stress, because I'm like, the movie does it really well. It shows the manic like levels of what he's stressed out about. Like,
then everything changed. Girls, grades, parents, 2 wars, impending environmental catastrophe, a messed up economy. All these things seem to come out of nowhere, like on the same day.
How his relationship, like, if he doesn't get into this school,
how
his
he
relationship
doesn't become president,
there.
He doesn't get like this huge mansion. Like, they show like a really cool detailed
like montage.
What would happen if he didn't get in?
then I wouldn't be able to put it on my college applications, which means I wouldn't get into a good college. Adam Smith could have foreseen the inequities of modern capitalism. If I didn't get into a good college, I wouldn't have a good job. Diffusing the situation in Iran through unilateral diplomacy is my top priority as Commander-in-Chief.
It's so funny because I'm like, that pressure is there. It's just, especially at that age, because you're no matter what, the reason why we put so much pressure on the kids at that point is unnecessary, because for some reason we're just, your life you need to be doing XYZ by this age. And it's still not a good mentality. I'm now entering my 30s. You know, I have friends who are just like, oh, Marcus, you're still doing that stand-up comedy thing and whatnot. And they have a kid, they have houses and stuff. I'm just like, it's not like, you know, I'm still happy with like my lifestyle. It's just not yours. So I'm like, I'm not worried about it. But yeah, no, that stress, everything in New York with that tier system on that age. That's why I like the storyline. Craig isn't the only Craig there is. I guarantee there's so many other ones. And it's also funny because not only because it sucks because of the New York tier system, you kind of are like, okay, do you want to be a scientist or do you want to be an artist? Pick one early on, because then like once you're too far away, it's gonna be so hard to change out of that route. And then you see it too in the film. And then I like the way that they film it. I also like the talking heads that they do. Because it's so good because the different students, you know, bragging, and then he just feels like average.
Yep.
And that's what makes him feel super insecure, because he doesn't know what he wants, and he's surrounded by his really smart friend, and then the girl he likes, and then like, you know, all these factors like lead into it, and then he actually then goes into the mental institution.
This is serious business.
Maybe I'm not explaining right how serious this is. It feels like everything's just building up, and everyone else, they just seem to handle everything, you know, like, but not me, you know? I'm scared, okay? And I can't go back out there. I don't know what, I might do something.
I feel like that is like the perfect introduction to who our character is from the jump. And then on top of that, like, you know, just shows that none of the, you know, pressure that he feels and none of the like ideologies are out of nowhere. It comes from a very specific like environment that he grows up. So
what I like about the movie too is, like you said, they take time to show out his insecurities. He literally even says, my parents aren't messed up, they treat me very well. It's just that every now and again his dad makes terrible jokes, and every now and again like his mom is not paying attention to some things. That's all he's like, they are literally good people. But I feel of the movies I have seen in my life, you always want the character to be relatable, and I feel like this is honestly from the jump one of the most relatable characters. Like, you see yourself so much in this kind of kid because you probably lived a life similar in general to this. So many kids in their life, they have that crush that they just can't talk to, and then next thing you know, someone goes and starts dating them. Now they're just jealous and they don't know what to do with their life. Or they have a big like test coming up, they have a big thing coming up, and they don't know how to apply for it, and they don't know what their vision for the future is. Honestly, the whole movie is just filled with these relatable moments, and the character really plays through that really well.
Well, who's the actor?
Keir Gilchrist.
Keir Gilchrist, who I was like, it's so funny because I'm pretty sure that might have been one of the first movies I ever saw him in, but
he's been pretty prominent afterwards. He's got his own Netflix show.
Let's see. Atypical and all these other ones. So and it's kind of a funny story. So United States of Terror, I guess, was his first one, but he's
also
good.
There's a young Zoe Kravitz, which is really shocking. I wasn't ready to see like young Zoe Kravitz quite yet, because I'm like, whoa, she's like hella hot now.
Oh his crush. Oh that's true. I forgot. And then everyone, dude, my favorite thing is if you look at Craig, he's still like, you could tell there's a big shift in like how they change, because Zoe Kravitz doesn't look like Zoe Kravitz now. It's like, but like the glow up happened, everyone else kind of like, you're a little bit taller version of your younger self. So
a moment I like in the movie is that, so literally it's just Keir Gilchrist plays his character. At no point in any of his flashbacks, at no point in any of the future like lead ups do they change his character. It's literally the actor himself being him as the president, being him as this guy in MTV Cribs. Where there's a moment where they flash back to him as a 5-year-old.
I can't do it. 5 years old and I'm already a failure.
What can't you do?
I can't even trace Manhattan on tracing paper. Tracing paper, are you kidding me?
Well, Craig, you can't trace freehand and expect it to be perfect.
Why not?
Because, honey, you're 5 years old.
and it's still him as his teenage self, but just acting as a 5-year-old.
Acting as a 5-year-old, also in like
Yeah.
in like baby clothes, in like a pillow fort.
But the reason why I really like that moment too is because like it kind of just shows that he really is just caught up on certain things too much, and I feel like that's a commonality, especially at that age. You're constantly just introspective on every single detail of your life. Why did I do that? Why did I pick up that fork that day?
Yeah,
Definitely really nail that.
Yeah, dude, all those like weird social interactions or like small steps that got you to there, you're like definitely too fixated on, because that's I mean, that's like your immediate life. Like you don't have any more experience other than like that. So, and then Craig goes into the mental institution, and then my favorite thing, no matter what, is the honesty that they take, where I'm like, there is the mental stigma, like you'll still have the friends, or you'll have like the ideas of your friends, because he has this idea of like his friend being like, oh, I heard you're in the loony bin, blah blah blah, making fun of him, because there's no matter what, there's still the stigma of mental health, and then like, you know, coming out talking to your peers. I mean, it's true, because like, especially if you have the friends who like will make fun of you, you know, mental health. That's the thing that I've learned, is that I've only become really good friends with people who I know would care about my mental health, because no matter at that age, it's so funny, because you want social acceptance, and then you definitely have those friends who are toxic, who aren't good for you, but that's just part of growing up, because you don't really realize that you don't need to be friends with them, but under social settings, you're just like, you think you need to. It's like coworkers. I don't need to be friends with this dude, but just to make the day go by, I guess so. It's also, the movie does go into flashbacks and like moments, because he does have a good, like, his friend who like bullies him, he has a good relationship with them, because he has like memories of them like biking to Coney Island.
Right.
That was like another good flashback. But anyway, Craig ends up in this mental institution. He meets Bobby, Zach Galifianakis, and then he meets Noelle, which is Emma Roberts, and then Dr. Minerva, Viola Davis. Like, that's also the thing. This movie is like so stacked.
Yeah, just stacked unnecessarily.
like I'm just like Lauren Graham. I was just like, oh my god. So he meets Noelle, and then like you get to meet these, like, it's funny because they do like the romantic interest in the like suicide thing. But I'm like, I feel like no matter what, that kind of does happen, because it's trauma bonding. Like, that's the big one. Like, from the pandemic, that's a real thing that does happen.
Yeah.
And then trauma bonding, because I feel trauma bound to people during from the pandemic. I'm like, yeah, we went through the same thing. Some of my old friendships, we like reconnected, and like we become stronger because we're trauma bound, because we don't know what the future is going to. We've been through XYZ together, and then like, you know, this is helping us get through it. And I'm hoping that these friendships don't fade, but it's really a lot of relationships, a lot of friendships and stuff like that are really bound to the periods, like, you know, where you guys are accessible and where, like, what you guys are currently going through. And then Noelle's character, she's in there, and I believe she's a cutter, I believe.
Not in here. Are you a virgin?
So, how long have you been here?
Nice transition, Craig. 21 days. Who dragged you here?
I checked myself in, I guess. Kind of by accident. The suicide hotline said to come. Why are you here so long?
They think I might cut myself again.
Yeah, she has cuts in her wrists,
Yeah, which is another big thing. And Bobby is like this adult, and he's like, Bobby's the funny character. He's the comedic relief of the movie.
How old are you?
16.
16? You look stressed out for 16. You need to relax. Get a girlfriend or something, you know?
I'm working on it.
He's literally just Zach Galifianakis. That's it. Like, he's not even trying to be anyone else.
Yeah. And Bobby's not a teenager. Everyone else is a teenager. Bobby's like an older guy there, and he's literally talking. He's like, I remember he's like, "Oh, why are you here?" Like, you know, everyone's like kind of talking like openly about like why they're in the, like, you know, was institution, but they're rehab. They're in the institution. And then Bobby's just like, "Oh yeah, I'm on vacation." It's just like, it's just these funny like things, because I think that's also like it, because like, you know, it's no matter what, I think it's always, everyone knows why you're there, and it's like you can't take the serious approach. And I just appreciate Zach Galifianakis' character. He's just a funny guy, but you know why? No matter what, he's there because he tried committing suicide, and like they don't really address it. It comes
they
up.
Never say it out loud.
It comes up in a couple times. It doesn't come up why, but I'm like he's a dad, which they reveal, and then he's there, so he's tried doing it a lot as an adult because he's like the veteran. He's been in and out like so many times. And it's so funny because it kind of has like this funny kind of prison lockdown like feel because Bobby's character, Craig, comes in and he's like the new guy, and then like everyone else who's already in the ward is like trying to like take advantage because Craig doesn't want to eat. No, Craig doesn't want to eat, and then the guy's like, "Can I have your food?"
He pukes often, so they ask him for his food all the time.
Yeah, he has the stress vomiting, which I definitely had that while I was in New York. I used to stress eat and stress vomit, so my weight would fluctuate for sure when I was in New York. But you have to eat because that's like a necessary thing. It's good for your nutrition and stuff like that. But like just those funny aspects. But yeah, Bobby's character, there's some guy who's asking Craig for his food, and then Bobby literally goes, he's like don't let him take your pudding cup, man. That's his pudding cup. and then it's literally like so prison yard style during that moment. And it's like it's funny. But then there's all these like little fights that keep going, and then Craig is also trying to talk to this girl. The phone system is very prison-like too because you're not supposed to
leave messages for people and then they have to call them back after they get the message.
Yeah. You gotta do like all these like little aspects of it. And he's trying to contact Naya, and she's talking with Aaron, who she broke up with because he made fun of Craig for checking into the institution. And it like literally shows like different aspects of like who you would see underneath those situations out, and also you see like a full range of how everyone handles depression, which is like someone who is like aggressive, someone who is avoidant. You also see like the biggest one, which is Mukata, which is like Craig's roommate that he gets paired in, the guy who
he's an Egyptian man.
Yeah, he's an Egyptian man, and he's just constantly depression napping. He doesn't like leave his room. I feel like I've been through the period of depression napping. I've been I'm just gonna become avoidant. Even like comedy, there's a lot of comedians who are really good who suffer from depression, and
100%.
they're fully Zach Galifianakis in the whole situation. And I'm like, you really do need to address it. You can't constantly be Zach Galifianakis. The smallest thing will like crack you. Even though Bobby's like the playful character, there you see the moments of rage come out, and it's really like bad. Like when Bobby doesn't want to talk at the group meeting. And like all these like angry things, I'm just like, you gotta just be able to articulate. You can't just be avoidant and be silly the whole time, because I'm like, that's just another like that's one way to deal with it, but it's also like very fake and fallible. So
I think they do that well, because there's that scene that you mentioned where he doesn't want to talk in the group therapy session, and it's because he's not quite yet ready for an interview he has coming up, but he doesn't want to literally say it out loud that's the reason why. He's like, no, I don't have a shirt to go to the interview tomorrow.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, okay, we can get you a shirt. Yeah. But there's like a moment where he definitely has a blow up after the interview because the interview doesn't go well, and he has this full on blow up, and I think that's cause and effect of it. Like you were saying, if you keep that kind of trapped inside you for so long, at a certain point it will boil over, and next thing you know, it puts you in these kind of predicaments. But I do think that movie in the book does that really well, of really showing you the cause and effect of all these situations and how it takes a toll on people. And it's not just all, loony people, like they are people. They are people who are just going through a rough time. Yeah. And like just dealing with it in their own ways.
Well, my favorite thing, no matter what, is it really shows the importance of one, expression, but also art. Because during the whole thing, they have like really good montages of them expressing themselves through art. And then like it's really like you get to see the beauty of like why art is important.
Yeah.
Because Craig finds his therapeutic relief and passion painting when he starts painting his brain as if it was like New York City. And that's also like the really cool thing about like the cover art of the book, because you just see like it's the mislead. If you pick up the book, it's literally like a head with the cross streets of lower Manhattan.
Yeah.
And then that's also like how his brainscape is. It's just like that, because he comes up, it brings him into the flashback to where he was in the blanket fort with his mom, and then Coney Island and all these other things. And then you also see my favorite montage is literally like the music montage of like Under Pressure.
Yeah.
David Bowie and like, Queen, they were both very big expressive artists. They were like these big weirdos. They're very very New York for David Bowie to be in the movie, because that's like the one thing, because Ned Vizzini is from Brooklyn, and he decided to make the film like that. At the closure of it all, Craig, he wins over Noelle. There's the romantic moment, but she's definitely the aggressive, person who is like, she's got herself, she's seen pain. She shows up to like a group meeting with I hate boys and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, I like your shirt. Like just all these like funny things. But and my favorite thing is he finds community. It's definitely like a story plot point, because the group doesn't really find community until Craig comes in, and then like he arranges like the pizza party, and then they get the Egyptian music to get Mukada out of his room. And then
fun fact, that's actually Lebanese music.
Lebanese music? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
they can't get one thing right for these Egyptian people, damn it.
Okay, cool. I was like, all right. I was like, when did you find that out?
I always like to research the trivia facts just to bring for the pod, but yeah, that was on IMDb.
So he ends up with Noelle instead of Naya because of their relationship and stuff like that. There's like a moment where he finds his value when he gets discharged, and like he tells like, everyone what he wants to do, and then starts like working on, his friendships, his relationships.
Bike, eat, drink, talk, ride the subway, read maps, make art, finish the Gates application, tell my dad not to stress about it, hug my mom, kiss my little sister, kiss my dad, make out with Noelle, make out with her more, take her on a picnic, see a movie with her, see a movie with Aaron, heck, see a movie with Nia, have a party, tell people my story.
Like, I think that's like the most important, no matter what, it is work to work on your mental health. Besides the movie and book, the book is really good. But also to understand like background of it, the author of the book did commit suicide, and
he did.
Ned Vizzini. Yeah, Ned Vizzini did commit suicide ultimately, but it's still it's not like it was like unprompted, because like the book like lays into it, but it's very unfortunate. It is a good piece because it talks about it. I'll say this: I definitely it's annoying that I find artists I like, and then they die of unfortunate reasons, like Mac Miller and stuff like that. But I also, because I'm also a big what is it? Elliott Smith also died. There's a weird common trend of me enjoying artists. It's nothing about you, but there is like a weird common trend with like a good artist who's good to articulate feelings and like emotions. The movie and book kind of point out how art is the expression, and if the art is really good, the pain is unfortunately usually accompanying it. And I'm just like, man. But my takeaway from the book and movie was literally the fact that you don't want to be, it was like, the quote is, I'd rather be with someone who is like messed up rather than someone who's faking it the whole time. And that's it. That's pretty much like what I enjoyed about that was, people are screwed up in this world. I'd rather be with someone screwed up and open about it rather than someone 100%. Who is perfect and ready to explode. Because I think that no matter what, there is, especially in like the social media age that we've now entered, that David Foster Wallace talked about, like this postmodern age where vanity is very important, or it's become like overhyped because of social media. Like, oh, you don't have a social media presence. That's why I'm a rural boy. I'm like, yeah, I don't need to be on social media. But unfortunately, my career choice was social media and entertainment. I think that this book I honestly think that it should be a required reading in school, because when I found it, I was already past like the high school point. And it sucks because like I'm just like reading it, just like, oh man, I'm like, this is so good. And then I was like, I wish I had this in middle school before I was stressing out about everything. I wasn't even thinking, because I've never had suicidal thoughts, but I've had the stress. So I'm like, I'm very grateful for that. But at the same time, like, I get it. I get why someone would commit suicide. Everything shouldn't be faced as a stigma, and you should be open about any kind of mental health or any kind of issues you're going through, because the thing is, you're not permanently in that point. You can always change, you can always grow. But I think as soon as like you stigmatize something or you shame it, then it kind of exacerbates the situation. You should point out your problems, because or you should address them, point them out, have them out there when you can with like people who are supportive, a community that you have, because you're not going to find a solution without addressing the problem initially. So that's how I feel about that. That's my uncommon gem.
As you had mentioned in that quote, it's better to be with like messed up people. I think that's what's important about the movie, is because at the beginning he kind of realizes like, oh, I don't think I should be here. Actually, I don't think this is actually for me. And he tries to back out immediately, but then as the movie continues, as he stays there for the 5 days, he learns to live with these people. He learns to live with their like conditions and learn to accept them for that. And in return, they do the same. Yeah. And like you said, that leads him to finding art. That leads him to that music montage. That leads him to getting with Noelle. And I think that's like kind of more or less the beauty of it. You know, we're all going through this pandemic, as you said. And when we come out of it, like, it's going to be a lot of reset buttons for a lot of people. So I think that's that's kind of like the true message to take away from the movie, though, is that, you know, you got to learn with people's problems, because we, like you said, we're not perfect. So try to learn to live with them and try to learn to accept those kind of problems.
Yeah, man. Oh God, dude, I feel like, dude, whenever we're vaccinated and the pandemic is considered officially over, it's literally gonna feel like the first day of school, and I'm nervous for re-entry. Like, even in New York, like, you know, even though I've been to New York and I've, like, you know, I've seen friends, I want to meet new people. And like a lot of my friendships have faded and then, like, you know, either gotten strengthened. But I'd say a lot of my New York friendships faded because a lot of my New York friends moved out or something different happened. And I was like, but I am nervous about that. But I got first day of school vibes for the whole thing.
Definitely. I mean, the Renaissance is going to be crazy. Whatever this Renaissance is going to be crazy. But there will be a Renaissance.
There's going to be an art Renaissance. Art needs art from disaster. Art is how culture happens again, and we gotta make culture for live events again, because dude, I found art through the live videos that people would film on their phones. Like, I used to make fun of that person. I've literally watched I've watched so many of those videos because I'm just like, I just want to know what it's like to be in the middle of a pit.
Cool. So, Marcus, before we start wrapping up here, is there anything you want the audience to know about It's Kind of a Funny Story, or any words of advice about this book and movie?
Yeah, I'd say, the movie's great, but it's always like one of those things where I'm like, you got to really read the book to just get like the intricacies. It's just like if you watch American Psycho, like, you don't really realize how crazy it is. I'm just like, because there's only so much that the movies can show you for it to get like a passing film pass. While in the book, I'm like, it gives you like the deeper details. The movie does a really good job, especially with like handling the art scenes, because it's definitely more colorful because it's visual rather than just like reading on a page. But yeah, I'd say, read this book. You know, even if you don't know anyone who's committed suicide or is like, you know, thought about it, or even if you think that you're mentally like fine, it's just a good book to read, and it's just a good reminder, not of yourself, but also of like different people in your world, and being able to recognize like patterns, or like what, like, you know, like we talked about cause and effect. Like, if you see like your friend being like aggressive, not to like, you know, push him or like try to find understanding, because like that's really it. Like, it's a book about understanding, acceptance, and like, you know, growing and whatnot. So yeah, 100%. That's pretty much it that I think for me on those notes. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking about it. And like I said, it was the first time I watched the movie, so I really enjoyed it. And I think that's important too. Like Marcus said, yes, it's a youth novel. Yes, it's about a teenager, but me as a 27-year-old being able to relate to the kid in the movie was really touching. And I think it's rare to see media in general to do that, to literally put you in that shoe or put you in that feeling like I could be this person or I've been this person.
Yep.
We had mentioned the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. So again, that is afsp.org. We'll put the link in our bio. We'll put the link in our Instagram, Twitter bio too, so you know where to find it. And we'll also mention the crisis text line, 741741. And the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 800-273-8255.
Yeah, that's the Logic lyrics. So.
So, Marcus, just because, you know, we're living through these crazy fucking times and you are a Filipino man, you do have knowledge of this, and you know this life more than anyone else. Do you mind speaking on a little bit about the attacks on the Asian community, the Pacific Islander community?
Yeah, the AAPI. I know that's a new term because we can't do Black Lives Matter because we come up with our own marketing. I'll say this: Asian suicide in America, I believe it hasn't gone up. I know that's high overseas, but yeah, with the current climate of everything that happened from the previous presidential cabinet and like all that they were spewing, especially with the pandemic, Asia being blamed because someone needed a source, or someone needed an outlet, the lockdown and like lack of exposure to other cultures. Like I'll say that it's a powder keg, and then it's just led to like the racism we're seeing being demonstrated today. And it's both it's a cult, again, it's cause and effect. So as an Asian entertainer, it's hard because we're slowly making progress because our voice and representation, especially in Western media, as an American isn't really shown. There's still like a big othering of our culture. Because no matter what, Black Americans, we've released like the entire history of that on film and media, while there's no real representation that I've seen for Asian Americans. And it's very limited too, because there's very much still like the white passing Asians. There's still like the casting of the Scarlett Johansson stuff, never been casted for anything. All you need to do is do this. And it's not like lack of talent, because again, there are plenty of Asian artists who are in the industries who you can cast, who can do the work. It's like a self-feeding cycle of what's happening. And as an Asian comedian, that sucks because the Asian comedians who get pushed are the ones who kind of like lean into the stereotype. Like I've definitely been given advice from like an older comedian where it's just like, hey, you should lean more into the Asian thing. And then it's just like, there's no taglines there. It's just like, just be the stereotype, be the character. I don't want to do that because that's racist. And also, every other race does it. Like I've been in black rooms and I've seen like a black comic do the Asian stereotype. And I'm like, it doesn't progress us. But because of like the culture that we've like created, we haven't really the media, because of like representation does matter. The media has skewed the Asian representation. So
100%,
unless you talk to someone who's Asian, it varies. You gotta respect like the old OG Asians, because the attacks aren't on the young Asians, which is like because we've been given a voice, but like the older Asians, like that's become like this. That's what's happening now, which sucks because they can't defend themselves. But with everything from the way that we're portrayed in the media, the pandemic, the lockdown, it's definitely like escalated to this point. Because it's been a weird last couple of years for Asians and representation. Like last year, 2020 was the first Asian comedy festival in New York City. The comedy scene in New York City, we haven't established like a good Asian audience like in the Bay Area, where most of the audience there is Asian. Same thing with like Vegas, same thing with Toronto. I honestly think no matter what, entertainers are still like the cultural definers. Even like no matter what, you still need like the face, you need the personality there to show everyone, speak your truth on stage or like on whatever platform you're on. So that one needs to be like promoted more. But besides that, like with the pandemic and stuff like that, these are all old stereotypes that have just been progressed. I always make a joke in my stand-up routine where I'm just like, I want updated racism for me. I'm like, I don't mind racism, but I get more offended if it's inaccurate. And I'm gonna say a slur that's not good for Asians, but it's like chink, because I've been called a chink before. And historically, that's specified for Chinese people. So you get kind of clumped in. And not only beside, like the other hard thing too that people should know about it is Asians not a unified front. Unlike the Black Lives Matter movement or like, black culture, where if you're black, mostly everyone is kind of like together. Asia is so many different countries, and there is like the weird stigma that, Asians are more racist to other Asians. And it's unfortunate because here in America, like, we still all get clumped together. So we're like kind of trauma bound by the same treatment, even though we're very culturally different. It's frustrating because there are positives that come from this, because now I'm seeing Asian unity kind of happen now. Like Asians are coming together because of this. We've been othered, and like now we are like we have to look out for each other, even though culturally we've been very divided because we're now under attack by like the external group. It's different now because unlike the Black Lives Matter movement, it's like directly an institution. It is directly the law enforcement, police force institution, while the attacks on Asian Americans are citizens and civilians. So the approach that we had to take,
and police too, in that case,
and police too, but most of the attacks have been just regular citizens, like the Atlanta attack and all the stuff, and it's all the stereotypes that have been pushed and just been exacerbated. The whole thing about like, you know, oh yeah, speak English and stuff like that, and a lot of this is still like World War II propaganda, and then that like even goes back further to like the history, because I'm like Chinese people have been around since the railroad, you know, in America. That's led to a lot of like fun things like chop suey. There's a lot of like weird, like deep historical stuff. Like MSG got villainized, and I'm like, this is just salt. And it just like all feeds into this where we've gotten now. But because we haven't had the platform, or we haven't been able to speak for ourselves, we're not being able to really speak upon the issues that we want other people to know without like, you know, being the stereotype. Because like entertainment, yeah, the mocking, a lot of Asian comedy, the mocking of Asian like culture and stuff like that, those are like jokes that we lean on that Asians didn't even create. We're just leaning on the stereotypes that every other culture made about Asian people. So it's a frustrating time, and it definitely like is motivating me, because like no matter what, I always like make up the point, even on like the podcast, I'm like, I'm Filipino, I'm also from Maine, and like everyone knows that about my set. But it's like, it's hard to humanize, or like to try to teach people to humanize a culture, especially when they lump so many different people into one group and it being targeted directly. Because the exposure to culture is really the most important thing. Like, it should never be a friend setting where you're in New York and I'm like, somehow it's all white friends, because I'm like, the lack of culture is just you need that, so that way you're not like, you know, making these stereotypes. As soon as you make, and it does tie back into, it's kind of a funny story, as soon as you dehumanize people in like whatever institution or someone from a certain group, then you're not finding a solution. You're just kind of you're contributing to the problem. And now the problem's just gotten to a violent, like, you know, reactionary point, because we want the outlet for rage, because we have been locked in. We can't go after the government. People have lost their jobs, but they want an outlet. Unfortunately, Asians were like, yeah, you guys, it started off in an Asian country, even though you guys are Asian American. Most of you don't even speak the language back over in Asia. And there's such a big difference between Asia and Asian American that it's dumb that that's how small of a connection someone needs to demonstrate their anger and rage, that they're just like, this is close enough. I need an outlet. You guys are it. Yeah, it's annoying. And then it's also like the Atlanta stuff is even worse because of the stereotype, because the guy was literally like, he had a bad, they said like the media is like still painting him as like, oh yeah, he just had a bad day. And then
terrible.
He went to a nail salon because of the stereotype that Asian women work at nail salons, because he was like, he killed them because of his horniness and he had a bad day. I'm just like, it's so dumb, because
disrespectful to those lives lost. Honestly,
disrespectful to those lives lost, but also because of, again, they're all self-feeding systems. He literally had the agenda of like, you know, killing Asian women because he was like overly like sexual to them. They were too sexual for his like, you know, taste. So then he went to the stereotype, which was like, oh, they're at a, you know, massage parlor, and then he killed them. And like that, again, that tie in with that, because I'm like, it's not like, no matter what, like massage parlors aren't like, you know, there for like happy endings. That's all old stereotypes. I'm like, it still happens for sure. That's like a true thing that just like kind of like self-fulfilling from that stereotype. But it's so hard to break the stereotypes that are imposed. Even me, like during this pandemic, I wasn't on Twitch. I wasn't gaming because I was also like ashamed of being the stereotype of being a gamer Asian, or like the Asian who was in anime. Because like, I'll say this, during the pandemic, I watched a bunch of anime, and like that was it, because I just didn't care anymore. yeah, those stereotypes, the only reason why I fight back is so that way I don't get pigeonholed. Right. But it's also annoying because I'm like, for instance, the anime stereotype isn't even an Asian thing anymore. There's so many black teens who watch anime.
Oh, dude, yeah. At a certain point, like, they're like the 2000s where like everyone was getting shit on for watching anime. And then out of nowhere, like everyone's like, "Oh no, anime's cool. Like, if you watch anime, you're cool."
Yeah, no, it's an annoying cultural shift, and it definitely gets imposed on people. And there's still there's even like weirder things that happen from it, because there's still like the weird one where it's like, "Oh yeah, you're Asian, you need to date an Asian woman." The way that culture works with stereotypes, and why you shouldn't lean into stereotypes, is because it does affect things on like a bigger, broad term level. Like 100%. The hashtag that's going around right now is End Asian Hate. And, you know, obviously everyone is like focused on the Asian women who are getting, who got killed, and like, you know, the over fetishization. That's like that's the conversation we're getting to right now, where it's like, you're over fetishizing the women. And I'm like, that doesn't come without a vacuum, because they've under-sexualized the men. Like the tiny Asian dick stereotype, that was World War II propaganda that soldiers would use to justify raping Asian women, and then also taking up like the Asian prostitutes, because they were just like, oh guys, no, we have to have sex with them because of the men here have tiny dicks. And I'm like, that stereotype got fixated, that like got propagated. It just kept getting push. And it's led to this weird vacuum, because I bring this up in my stand-up too, where Asian men and black women are the most, like, you know, unlikely to match on, like, that's why I'm not on dating apps either, but Asian men and black women are the most likely, have the lowest, like, you know, matchability. That's a cultural like reflection that, if you want to see the statistics, it comes from racism. You've imposed, like, you've desexualized Asian men, and then you've villainized and characterized the black angry woman. And then this is what's ended up, like, this loop just keeps getting fed across like all different like sectors. And it literally is because of like lack of representation, lack of humans connecting with people of different cultures. So yeah, that's really what should be happening. Like, if you do have Asian friends, have conversations with them. If you're an Asian who's afraid to express themselves, this is like one of the best times to be on a platform. Just put yourself out there, just so people know. And it's not shameful, because again, a lot of first generation born Asians and like the mom minority stereotype that also gets fed into, like, keeping your head down and working. We don't want conflict, but somehow culture has, like, you know, made it, oh no, they love working because they're like keeping their head down. I'm like, no, they're not expressing. That's also why no matter what group you're in, express yourself if you're going through the pain. And then if you're an outside group, listen to communities that you're not listening to who have the issues currently going on. So it all, I'm glad that all tied in together, because I was like, all right. I'm like, this is an interesting add-on to the episode. Yeah. But I'm like, no, I should talk about it because I have the platform. That's what I mean. And I'm like, the representation. So
I'll be honest, like 100% honest, majority of the audience is not even close to Asian or close to that community. So I'm really glad to have you on the show and to have it speak on it, because like you said, it's a lot more deep roots than people may realize. There's a lot more shit going on than people realize.
Oh yeah, no, it's all cultural. It's all like deep. You need to know the backstory. Realistically, what they should do now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, they should do the film that shows the background of it, because the background of like the history and stuff like that of why it got villainized, and it should be like just produced, because there are documentaries in weird ways that show like the Asian struggle, but unfortunately there's still like the weird stereotype again with film, movies, and like anime and stuff like that. It's like, oh, it's all Asians, this is for Asians, I don't need to watch this. I'm just like, no, you should watch it, just so that way you like are culturally aware. And it is marketing, it is like very specific things. And like, again, there's gonna have to be if you do a film about representation like what's going on right now, it needs to be, it's unfortunate because like we need Asian voices, but it really needs to be endorsed by like a rich white celebrity. Oh, just so it gets like
it all comes full circle again.
Dude, it's annoying. It's very much, you have a message, we want to give a voice to Asian people, but it also needs to be promoted by a non-Asian voice for it to get any widespread traction, which it's annoying. It's annoying, but that's somehow how the consumer we've created. It all is environmental settings, and anyone who's willing to break down that border and like kind of break the stigma is contributing to the culture, because it doesn't need to be a message just specified for one particular group. It should be a message that's spread for every group to give a voice to people who don't have a voice, and that's what needs to happen. So That's yeah.
Could not agree more. Could not agree more. Right. Well, thank you again so much for speaking on that. I know it's crazy fucking times for so many involved, but we need to get that message out because it's so important.
Oh no, absolutely. That's why I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna go all in right now. I'm just like, I thought I was gonna see red. I thought I was gonna fade out. I thought I was gonna cry. It's fine.
Folks, this is Marcus Cardona. Please check him out. Please check out the things he's doing. As I said, he's on Instagram, Twitter, Marcus Cardona.
Twitch, Neurotic Fodder. I have a podcast called Meme Therapy. If you're in Maine, I have Cabin Fever comedy series outdoor during the pandemic. That's gonna be coming back, and then I'm gonna be back in New York doing more shows, producing more shows. So yeah, check me out there. Talk to me on social media. I'm like, there's no weird entertainer audience thing. You could just talk to me on my Twitch. I'll talk with anyone.
Hell yeah. Any last words for the people?
Make sure that you guys are surrounding yourself with a good community. Realize that you are loved. You have value, even though you don't feel like it. You are going to be accepted in every group that you seek out there. If you haven't found them, you'll find them. But reach out, know your resources, know who's there to support you, and then just focus on love, because love heals everything. That's all I gotta say.
Hell yeah. God damn it. That ain't the truth. Thank you so much, Marcus. And thanks again to Boy Brooks for the music. Thanks again to Lawrence for the art. Folks, you can check us out on Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, Apple Music. As always, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. You just gotta look up Uncommon Gem Podcasts. We'll be back again next Friday with another episode. Till then, y'all take care.
Thank you.